Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered if everything you've done, every choice you made, every word you spoke, was ever truly good? Or did you just tell yourself it was, to sleep a little easier at night? There's something heavy about silence. It crawls inside your chest, wraps itself around your thoughts, and forces you to listen to the things you've tried to bury. That's what it's been like lately. Every night, when the world gets quiet, I hear that voice in my head asking, "Am I a good person, Tommy?" And I don't know how to answer anymore. I used to think being good was simple. You help when you can. You smile when it's hard, and you try not to hurt anyone along the way. But lately, I've started to realize it's not that easy. Sometimes, life throws you into corners where every choice feels wrong, where doing the right thing doesn't even look like the right thing anymore. That's where I found myself standing in the middle of a storm I created, pretending I didn't see the damage around me. Tommy, you always said I had a good heart. You said I cared too much, that I'd rather break than let someone else hurt. Maybe you were right once, but something in me changed. It's strange. The more I tried to protect people, the more I started losing pieces of myself. I stopped recognizing the reflection staring back at me. It's not guilt that eats at me, it's confusion, because I don't know if I did the wrong thing for the right reasons or the right thing for the wrong ones. Sometimes, I replay that night in my head, every sound, every word, every heartbeat. I see myself standing there, doing what I thought I had to do. My hands weren't steady, my voice cracked, but I told myself it was necessary, that I was doing it to save someone, to stop something worse from happening. I remember thinking, good people have to make hard choices too. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the truth. It was just something I whispered to feel less like a monster. And yet, here I am, sitting in the quiet again, trying to convince myself that I'm not one. It's strange how the mind works. You can build 1,000 reasons, 1,000 excuses, but the silence doesn't care. It strips you bare, and all that's left is you, raw, uncertain, and desperate for someone to tell you that you're still worth forgiving. That's why I talk to you, Tommy, because even though you're gone, your voice still feels like the only one that ever told me the truth. Do you think I went too far this time? Would you still say I have a good heart if you saw what I did? I keep thinking about what you would have said, that sometimes good people do bad things, but that doesn't make them bad. Maybe that's true, or maybe that's just another lie we tell ourselves when we don't want to face who we've become. I wish you were here to tell me the difference, because I'm tired, Tommy, tired of carrying this question in my chest, tired of pretending I know the answer. I'm not asking for forgiveness anymore. I just want to understand why it still hurts. Even after I convinced myself I did the right thing. Maybe that's what makes it worse. The fact that deep down, part of me still believes I did something right, and the other part knows that belief is the only thing keeping me from falling apart. It happened on a Tuesday night. Funny how the smallest, most ordinary days can carry the kind of memories that never leave you. The sky was bruised with clouds, heavy and low, like it already knew what I was about to do. I remember standing under a flickering streetlight, the kind that hums just enough to make you feel like someone's watching. My hands were cold, my thoughts louder than the world around me. I kept telling myself, it's for the best, it has to be. But the truth, Tommy, is that I didn't even know what best meant anymore. You always said that people show their real selves in moments of pressure, that when everything is falling apart, who we truly are slips through the cracks. That night, I think I saw my real self for the first time, and I didn't like what I saw. It wasn't anger that pushed me. It wasn't even fear. It was something smaller, darker, the need to control the pain before it controlled me. Maybe that's what makes us dangerous. Not the hate in our hearts, but the desperation to stop feeling helpless. I told myself I was helping, that what I did was mercy. I looked at their face, eyes wide, hurt, confused, and I convinced myself that my silence was a form of kindness. That walking away was better than staying and breaking us both even more. But even as I walked, I could feel the truth clawing at the back of my mind. Good people don't run from the wreckage they cause. They stay and face it. I didn't. I turned my back and told myself it was noble. When I got home, everything felt too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your own breathing sound like thunder. I sat there for hours, waiting for something to change, for the world to shift and tell me I'd done the right thing. But nothing came. The clock kept ticking. The world kept spinning. The only thing that changed was me, a little colder, a little emptier, a little more aware of what I'd lost. The doubt didn't hit me all at once. It came in fragments, a memory here, a sound there. A laugh that used to make me smile now felt like a ghost whispering from another life. Sometimes I'd catch myself rehearsing conversations that never happened. What if I had said one more thing? What if I had stayed just a little longer? Would any of it have made me a better person, Tommy? Or was the ending always written this way? You know what's strange? Guilt doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sits quietly beside you, blending into your routines, your habits, your smiles. You start carrying it around like a shadow, invisible to everyone else, but heavy enough to bend your back. That's what the days after felt like. I smiled at people. I laughed at jokes. I said I was fine. And maybe, for a few seconds at a time, I almost believed it. But at night, when I'd close my eyes, I'd see it, that single moment where everything could have gone differently. I'd replay it like a movie that never ends, trying to edit the scene in my mind, trying to change the lines, the choices, the tone. But no matter how many times I rewrote it, it always ended the same way. Me walking away under that flickering light, and the silence that followed. I've tried to forgive myself. I've tried to say that people make mistakes, that maybe I did what anyone else would have done. But that feels like a cheap excuse, because I know, deep down, that I had a choice and I chose the one that hurt less in the moment. I chose comfort over courage. And maybe that's what this all comes down to. The quiet difference between being a good person and just wanting to feel like one. Sometimes, I wonder what you'd think if you saw me now. Would you still say I have a good heart? Or would you see what I'd become, a person afraid of their own reflection? Because that's what doubt does. Tommy, it eats at the edges of who you are, until all that's left is a question that never gets answered. Maybe there are no good or bad people, just people trying to survive the weight of their own decisions. Maybe goodness isn't something you are, but something you keep chasing, even when you keep falling short. And if that's true, then maybe I haven't lost everything yet. Maybe the fact that I still feel this doubt, this ache, means there's still a piece of good left in me, buried under all the noise. But tell me, Tommy, how long does it take before a mistake stops defining who you are? How long before the silence forgives you? You know what's worse than guilt, Tommy? The silence that follows it. The kind that doesn't yell, doesn't accuse, doesn't forgive, it just stays. It lingers in the corners of every room, sits beside you at dinner, hums in the spaces between breaths. It's been weeks now, and I still talk to you like you're sitting across from me. Maybe that's my punishment, hearing my own voice echo against the walls. Pretending it's yours, answering back. Sometimes I catch myself pausing, waiting for you to interrupt like you always did. You'd tilt your head, half a smile, and say, "You're overthinking again." But there's no voice now, just silence, cold, patient, unbothered by my explanations. I pour my thoughts into it, hoping they'll turn into forgiveness. But they never do. Silence doesn't care about reasons. It only cares about truth. I keep asking you the same question. Tommy, am I a good person? I ask it to the ceiling, to the night, to the ghost of your memory. But all I ever get back is quiet. And maybe that's the answer. Maybe the reason you don't say anything, the reason I can't imagine you saying anything, is because you don't know either. Maybe good and bad stopped mattering a long time ago, and I'm the only one who hasn't realized it yet. The world looks different without your voice guiding me. People still smile, but their eyes don't feel real anymore. The days blur together, and I keep wondering if you'd still recognize me. I do the things I used to make the coffee too strong. Stare out the window at nothing. Try to read but never get past the first page. But everything feels muted, like I'm moving through a life that isn't mine anymore. I think about that last conversation we had. You said, "The hardest part of being a good person is not proving it to others, it's believing it when no one's watching." Back then, I nodded like I understood. I didn't. I thought being good was about choices, the visible kind, the big moments that define you. But now, I think it's about the quiet ones, the moments when no one will ever know what you did, and you have to live with the echo of your own decision. That's the silence I live in now. It's not empty, it's full of every word I didn't say, every apology I rehearsed but never spoke. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine what you'd say if you were here. Would you tell me it's okay? That people make mistakes? That life isn't about being perfect but trying again? Or would you just look at me? That quiet, disappointed look that says, "You knew better." I wonder if silence can forgive. Maybe it can't. Maybe forgiveness isn't something that comes from outside. Maybe it's something you have to build inside yourself, brick by brick, even when your hands are shaking. I've been trying, Tommy, I swear I have. But every time I start to forgive myself, that silence grows louder, like it's laughing at the idea that I could ever deserve peace. Some nights, I play your old voice messages, not to hear your words, but to remember the pauses between them, those small stretches of silence that used to comfort me. Now, they hurt, because back then, silence meant you were thinking. Now, it just means you're gone. Maybe that's what growing up really is, realizing that the people who guided you won't always be there to tell you what's right. You have to learn to live with your choices, even when they bruise your soul. Maybe you don't ever get answers. Just a quieter kind of pain that becomes part of you. I've stopped waiting for your voice. Tommy, the silence has become my teacher now. It doesn't lie to me, doesn't promise redemption, doesn't soothe the ache, but it forces me to sit with who I am. No masks, no excuses. It's a cruel kind of mercy, really, because in the stillness, I can finally hear myself. And what I hear isn't proud or brave, it's just honest, and maybe that's all goodness really is. Not perfection, not purity, just honesty, the kind that doesn't hide behind reasons or fear. Maybe you were right all along. Good people don't always do good things. They just never stop asking if they still can. So, I'll keep asking, Tommy. Not because I expect an answer, but because the asking keeps me human. Because, even in your silence, I still need to believe that I can be better than the person I was that night. And maybe, someday, when the silence finally fades, I'll know I've become the kind of person you believed I could be. You ever notice how the mind becomes a courtroom, Tommy? How it builds arguments, stacks memories like evidence, calls emotions to the stand. I've been living in that trial for days now, both the judge and the accused, and every time I try to defend myself, I end up back where I started. I keep saying I had no choice, that the world cornered me, that I did what I had to do. But every time I say it, it sounds weaker. Maybe because the truth doesn't need to shout. It just waits, patient, like a verdict I already know. Still, I can't stop trying to make sense of it, to put logic where pain lives. Maybe that's how people survive what they've done, by building reasons around it. By turning guilt into something that sounds like wisdom. I tell myself, you did it for love. You did it to protect. You did it because no one else would. And for a few minutes, those words feel strong enough to stand on. But then the silence comes again, the same silence that took your voice, and all my defenses collapse. Because if what I did was right, why do I keep trying to convince myself it was? You used to tell me that everyone thinks they're the hero of their own story. I laughed at that once. I thought only selfish people believed it. But now I see how easy it is to become one of them. When you're standing in the middle of chaos, and the only way to survive is to rewrite the story in your favor, you'll grab the pen without hesitation. You'll tell yourself you were brave, not cruel, that you were forced, not flawed, that the blood on your hands isn't red, it's proof of your devotion. And maybe that's what scares me most. Tommy, how good I become at justifying my sins. How natural it feels to twist the narrative until I'm the victim again. I used to think monsters knew what they were, that they saw the darkness and chose it. But maybe the real monsters are the ones who look in the mirror and still manage to smile. The ones who can do something terrible, then whisper, I did it for love. I keep going back to that moment. I tell myself, if I hadn't done it, things would have fallen apart. That I saved something, someone. That pain was the price of protection. It's a story that almost sounds noble if I repeat it enough. But every time I close my eyes, I see the face I hurt, the shock, the betrayal. And no matter how many reasons I build around it, I can't erase that image. It lives behind my eyelids, quiet and unforgiving. There's a strange kind of peace in blame, isn't there, when you can point to someone else, fate, the world, bad timing, and say, it wasn't my fault. I've tried that too. I blamed the situation, the pressure, even you for leaving. But deep down, I know it wasn't any of those things. It was me. I made the choice. And I made it with full awareness of what it would cost. That's the part I can't defend, no matter how many excuses I wrap around it. But here's the cruel truth. I'd do it again, even knowing what it did to me. Because the part of me that made that choice still believes it was necessary. That's the battle I live with, not between right and wrong, but between the heart that aches and the mind that insists it was worth it. Maybe being human means learning to live with both. Sometimes, I think about what you'd say if you were here. You'd listen quietly, that small crease in your brow, and then you'd say something simple, something that cuts right through the noise. Maybe you'd say, you're trying too hard to sound innocent. And you'd be right. Because innocence isn't something you can defend. It's something you either have or you don't. And I lost mine the moment I started explaining why I deserved to keep it. Still, I can't stop talking to you, because maybe the act of explaining, of trying to make you understand, is my way of holding on to what's left of my humanity. Maybe justification isn't about proving I'm right, but about convincing myself I still care enough to try. Because only someone who still feels guilt would go through all this trouble, right? Only someone who still has a soul would keep questioning it. That's what I tell myself, at least. That this endless self-defense, this desperate need to be understood, means there's still light left in me, dim, but alive. You'd probably laugh at that. You always said I overthink everything. But maybe overthinking is just what happens when your heart refuses to give up on itself. So here I am, Tommy, my own lawyer, my own executioner, standing between truth and peace, still arguing my case to a ghost. Maybe there's no verdict coming. Maybe the only way to move forward isn't to win the argument, but to stop having it. Maybe being a good person isn't about proving you're right, but about admitting when you're not, and choosing to keep going anyway. Because even after everything, Tommy, after the silence, after the doubt, after the guilt, I still want to believe I can be someone better than my worst moment. And maybe that's my justification now. Not for what I did, but for who I'm still trying to become.